מצווה נ"ה, והמצווה החומש וחמישים, היא שציוונו להקריב כבש הפסח ביום 14. There are two issues over here. The question is it lahakriv or lishchot, or is it seh, or is it keves? So in the Tilgum, the Targum of lahakriv is the literal translation of the Judeo-Arabic. And this is what Ibn Eov and Kapach suggest as a translation. Ibn Tibin says lishchot, and there's no indication of lishchot in the here in Sefer HaMitzvos, at least in the Judeo-Arabic. Ibn Tibin's Tilgum is based probably on the Mina Mitzvah Kotzer, where it says Lishchot Keves HaPesach, and in Mishnah Torah also, and the Protei Mitzvahs, it says Lishchot Es HaPesach B'zmano. Also, in Hilchos Korban Pesach, in Perek Aleph Halacha Aleph, Mitzvah say Lishchot Es HaPesach B'Arba'a Chodesh Nisan Ach Chatzos. And you could make a point for this because the pasuk said ושחטו ישראל כל קהל הדס בני ישראל. And that's just in terms of the Arabic and and what the Ram says in various places, what the pasuk says. We'll come back to this in Mitzvah Hashem. Now, Keves is both the Tilgum of Ibn Eov and Kapach. In Ibn Tibin it says Ser. Keves is also the literal translation of the Judeo-Arabic. And that's why, maybe one should use that. But whatever. Okay, let's continue. The nusach, or the translation, the tilgum of lahakriv, would be supported by the Minchas Chinuch in Parshas Bo. They were Maser Lishchot. He asked the question on the Chinuch, who probably is quoting Ibn Tibin, that the mitzvah is lishchot. So comes the Minchas Chinuch and says, Lav dafka hashchita, ela hainu hakrova ad zrikas adom, v'iloi nizrak adom, kil chosoi, loikim Aseh. And also this is supported by the Sefer in Simit Tough Tes Vov and Fus Yosher Tough Hey. Lases HaPesach, Siva Kodesh Baruch Yisrael, Shiyasu Es HaPesach, Siva Pashas Baloischa, Vayas B'nei Yisrael Es HaPesach, Moadoi. Vasis HaPesach, Hainu Shchitoso, Zrikas Domoy, Vehekte Murov. V'af Pi Shezrikas Domoy, V'aktor Zemur, V'kohanim Oisim, V'lo Yisraelim, Kiven She'akorban, Shel Yisrael, V'mitz Yisrael Oisim, Yasu B'nei Yisrael Karinim Be. So that's why you can imagine to use the translation of lahakriv, because without akrov you're not makayim the mitzvah. That's the Reim says, and that's what the Judeo-Arabic seems to point to. Amir Hashem, we will discuss this more barichus. I don't think now is the time. I just want to tell you, the problem is to compare and contrast it to mitzvah Nun Zayin, where the mitzvah of Pesach Sheni, and there I think, go, let's see. Nun Zayin, let's say. Hu atzivui shenitzavinu b'shchitas Pesach, and there it says in the original Judeo-Arabic b'shchitas Pesach Sheni. So it's very odd that the mitzvah of Pesach Rishon should be Yaaklohu and the mitzvah Pesach Sheni should be Shchita, but that's not our point now. I'm just into the moment in looking at what the text says over here in the Judeo-Arabic and the Minchas Chinuch issue, and supported by also the Reim. Next. Lahakriv keves ha-Pesach b'yom ha'ba'asa b'Nisan. V'hu amra yis'aleh v'shachatu oisei kol kahal adas Yisrael bein ha'boim. Umi she'oiver al hatzivui zeh v'lo yakrivehu bizman ha'b'mezid. If he violates the tzivui and b'mezid and does not mock of the Korban Pesach, chayiv kolos. Chayiv kolos. Bein shehoya ish o isha. Irrelevant whether it's a man or woman. Ki kvar hizboya b'gmor psochim tzadi aleph mebeis shepesach rishon chovo lenoshim v'doiches haShabbos. He starts talking about chorus. He says, "Chayva doiches haShabbos." Of course, what's going kloima? Hakovosa be'arbaosa shechal yos b'Shabbos. Kamoi kol ish v'ish v'Yisrael. It's very odd. He starts talking about men, and he says women are the same. And then he has what seems to be a parenthetical remark, talking about whether it's Doicha Shabbos or not, that it is Doicha Shabbos. The question was, what does he want? One would have said, that he quotes the din the Noshim Chayavis is that makes a lot of sense, because since in mitzvahs Aseh as man gromo you can find a noshim ptuos, so it's just the same way in Shalom Simcha he says in noshim achayev, he also says noshim achayev, but Tchias Shabbos l'cheira is part of the nitty gritty, the dinim of Pesach, and it's not really the place for it in Minyan HaMitzvos. So why is I'm quoted here? So I would assume, and I think the answer probably is, that the Chias Shabbos or Shchitas Pesach b'Shabbos is intertwined with the fact the person is chayiv. So you can prove, or you can prove that women are chayiv in the mitzvah of hakovas korban Pesach Rishon from the fact that a korban Pesach of a woman is the Shabbos. That's the Ram is trying to prove. And therefore, as we'll see, that Shchitas Pesach Sheni, which Noshim will see are not chayev, but it's you are not sheichet on a woman on Shabbos on Pesach Sheni, and everything fits because the Chiyah Shabbos and the Chiyuv go hand in hand. And in Pesach Rishon and Noshim Chayiv, there is the Chiyah Shabbos. And in Pesach Sheni, where they're not Chayiv, the Chiyah, it's not the Shabbos. And the Ram over here is just trying to say the women are Chayiv and therefore the Chayiv Koris. And the question is to prove that they're Chayiv, because he says, Chayiv Koris, it's even Chayiv Koris, Bein Shohoye Ish, O Isha. And how do I know that? Kvar by Pesach Rishon Chovel Noshim. But there is a Shabbos in a Chayiv Kloima Hakavos Mavos Chalios b'Shabbos. Then he says Kmo Kol Ish V'ish V'Yisrael. He means it's a very strange sentence. And what he wants to stress is the Chiyuv Isha, and the Chiyuv Ish in Pesach Rishon is Hainu Hach. And the Raya, that it's the same, is that by even a woman's korban is also Derech Shabbos. And that's what he says, Ki kvar his boyer. B'gmor Psochim, says Ben Shoish, Ki kvar is an explanation, a proof that women and men are the same as in Korban Pesach, and it's Chayiv Koris, both man and woman. This is the proof. What he wrote, Mishoiva al Tzivu Zel, Ekivenu Bizmanu B'Meiz Chayiv Koris, Ben Shoish. Now, let's continue. Loshen Ater B'Chiva Kores Bo, U'omroi, V'Ish Asher Hu Toho, U'V'derech Lo'Hoyo, V'Chodol Aseh HaPesach V'Nichaso, B'Chlis Chisis, Kishemonu, HaMitzvos Sheyischayv Ho'iva Alein Kores, V'Heim Kulam Mitzvos Lo Yisaseh, Omu, every Chiv Kores is intertwined Mitzvos Lo Yisaseh, except Omu. The Chachmei HaMesayah said, V'Pesach V'Amilo B'Mitzvos Aseh. So if someone violates Pesach Rishon, he's Chayiv Koris because he violates the Mitzvah Aseh. Ukfar Zochanu Zeh B'Hakdomo. What it means, the Hakdomo? This is the Hakdomo to Sefer HaMitzvos, the Hakdomo after Shurish Yudalid, where he discusses Ein Oinshin Elikei Mashirim, and he says that all Chayiv Krisis and chiv Mrs. Bezdin, but there are two exceptions, Pesach and Mila, there's a chiv koris, even though there's no lav. And that's what he writes. V'zeh, in the Hagdomot to Sefer Mitzvos, after Cherish Yudalit, v'zeh mashir etzinu, lagdimoy, v'zeh hasherish, uboy nishlamu, kol hashroshim, shetoyel hakdomosam, b'ma she'anachnu boy, v'ro'ui gam shenischaber el zeh hakdomosam, v'hu, shekol mi shechayov olov, Mrs. Bezdin, no kores, who Mrs. Loisa said. Behechrach, every chiv Mrs. Bezdin and kores is a Loisa. Zulosri Pesach Umilo, sheheim bekores, Yava pi sheheim mitzaseh, Kmo sheom betchilis v'seres krisis, v'ein itonu, b'shum ponim mitzaseh, she's chayiv oiva leo kores, Zulosom, except for Pesach and Mila. Kol shekei Mrs. Bezdin, because we don't find any case in Mrs. Bezdin there's no lav. V'chol ma shebo b'teira she'oisa ma'aser ploni yog o yischayev koros neda be'emes she'apula hi muzim mimenu u'shehi b'lo yisaseh. That's this. So that's mitzvah Nun. Now, Nun Vav. HaMitzvah Ashesh v'chamishim hi shetzivonu לאכול כבש הפסח בליל חמישה עשר מניסן. To eat the Korban Pesach on the night of the 15th of Nisan. Bitnoim tno'ov haniskorim. And these are, haniskorim means with the tnoim that are mentioned in the Pasuk, in the Torah. V'hu she'yeh etzli, שיאכלו בייס אחד, שיאכל עם מצו מורו. ואומרי, ואכלו את הבשר בלילה הזה, אצלי אש, ומצות ומרורים יאכלו. Okay. So let's take each thing slowly here. The Rambam takes as a given that the mitzvah of Akrobas Korban Pesach and the mitzvah of Achilas Korban Pesach are two separate mitzvahs. The Bahag is also of that opinion. The mitzvahs Kumvaseh, Lasos HaPesach, Lochloi Tzli. However, one can ask the following question. We learned in Shirish Yud Beis, the Ma'aseh Oila, the Ma'aseh Chatos, the Ma'aseh Shlomim, that when you have a Seder of many tzivuyim, you count it as one mitzvah. So I would have assumed that the mitzvah Korban Pesach and the Achilas HaPesach is the Seder from the Maaseh Korban Pesach, and you could have imagined that it's one mitzvah min mitzvahs. So what I'm trying to suggest is, using the Rambam's own logic, you could have come to the opposite conclusion and said that the Hakovas HaPesach and the Achilas HaPesach are not two mitzvahs, but one mitzvah. So you could suggest two options. One is that Koris was only formulated back over his Korban Pesach. As it says explicitly in the Pasuk, Vo'ish asher hu toho v'derech lo hoyo v'chodo lasos ha'Pesach v'nichleso ha'nefesh hahi me'ameho ki korban Hashem lo hikri b'moadoi cheto yiso ishahu. It's mistaber that if you have a mitzvah of a Seder of Korban Pesach that includes both the Akrova and the Achila, and you would have assumed that you mevatel the mitzvah if you're not mekayim the whole mitzvah, Achilas HaPesach, we never find, see, I would have assumed, let's say like this, I would have assumed that this chorus, if it would have been one mitzvah, that not only for a person who refrains from akrova, but a person who doesn't eat the Korban Pesach. And we only find chorus only for akrova. So that is the first thought. He would have said that the fact that chorus is limited to the akrova, not to the achila, it's a raya that it's two mitzvahs. This svara you find in Sefer Maas and Nisim, Simen Hey. V'oid shchitus HaPesach mitzvah sheyesh bo chorus. V'achilosoi doime l'sham mitzvah say she'ein bo chorus. Ki lo Chorav HaPesach bizmanoi v'nimnem l'ochloi leil tezvov it's probably like this. Kilu Chorav HaPesach bizmanoi v'nimna, he's makav the Korban Pesach mil'ochloi b'leili tezvov kvar kiyim a-mitzvah b'shchita upotem min ha-keres upotem Pesach Sheni. So that's a raya that it's a separate mitzvah. That is suggested in Sefer Ma'aseh Nisim. There's another option that one could say that you apply Shurish Yud Beis, that you have a Seder of Maasim and Pulois, that it's all one mitzvah. One could suggest that it only is if the mitzvah is done, and all the mitzvah can be done in a certain time period. But if minadin, by definition, you have to do the maasim bismanim shonim, then And you would say that you can't be mitzaref these two ma'asim, which have to be done at two separate times, as one tzivui and one mitzvah. But the two mitzvahs, the akrovas HaPesach is in Yudalid ben Arbayim, and the achilas HaPesach is in Leil Tezvav. And someone who eats the Korban Pesach on Yudalid ben Arbayim, not only he's not mekayim the mitzvahs achila, but he's over on an Aseh. The Ram Hilchos Korban Pesach, Periches Halacha Hey. This second time is also found in Rishonim, in Shalos Teshuvos Ma'aseh Nisim, Siman Hey. He says, "V'echi tochen shiurim hazeh," or yakish, and suggests that it's one mitzvah, and say it's like b'zichei levoyin v'lechem aponim, which not only to say there, but the whole thing is one mitzvah. Im heyois hashchita tluya bizman chutz mizman mitzachilo. They're two separate times, and by definition, they're for two mitzvahs. Ki mitzvah shchita mechoyves yom haba asa. Arabos yoyim l'chodesh hazeh ושחטו עושה כל כעס בנאיס, יפקוד עשר בין הבאים, מצחילה בלילי חמשה also. The Yereim also says this svara. And Sefer Yereim, Siman Tov Tezvav, in the Yoshua, Siman Tov Hey, that this is a reason that two different times why you should count the mitzvah achilas HaPesach as a separate mitzvah lakovas HaPesach. The Ramban uses this for, but there's much more into it, because the Ramban says that even a repetition of the same ma'aser, if it's done at two separate times, is also, it has to be done at two separate times, becomes two mitzvahs. Therefore, the Tomah Shel Shachris and Tomah Shel Bain are two mitzvahs, minyan mitzvahs. Kliyishma Shel Arvis and Kliyishma Shel Shachris are two mitzvahs, minyan mitzvahs. Ramban is at the end of Shir Yudalev. When the Ram says over here, so that's that Keves HaPesach, Lechol Keves HaPesach, B'chamisha Aseh B'Nisan, that either it's a separate mitzvah, either because there's no Chiv Koris, or because by definition it's a different time than the Akrova. But Tnoim and Iskorim over here are Tnoim which are not necessarily Kuva. Some of them will be, but some might not. For example, we'll see that Achilas Matzah Umora is not Ma'akim and Korban Pesach. So it includes Tnoim, which are not Likuva. But Sli So you have three dinim. You have achilo imatzu moro, achilo sli, and b'bayis echod yochel. So al matzu morim yachlu that you need to eat with matzu moro, that's not likula. But sli and bayis echod are likula. Woohoo! Sli and achila matzu moro is in the pasuk. It says v'achol es habasar balilah zeh sli eish umatzos amurim yachlu. So we have matzah moro and sli. However, b'bayis echod ye'ochel is in a different parsha, and it's a little odd. Why the Rambam mentions over here, because the purpose over here is not to write Mishnah Torah and the Prate mitzvahs, but the mitzvah of kol. But just tell you that there's a mitzvah, I say, separate mitzvah of achilles kol and Pesach. It's a separate parsha. It says a bais echod ye'ochel in Yud Beis Memvov. So I would suggest that the Rambam is telling you, besides the fact that if you take the basar outside of the chabur, the korban pesach is nesal mishum treifa, as the Rambam says in Hilchos korban pesach perites halacha beis. But there's another halacha that the Rambam says that it's a t'nai in kiyum mitzvah. The Rambam says in perites halacha aleph, kol oichel min pesach. Einu oichel ele b'chabur achas. Oh, that's the mitzvah. Might want to look at Piskilov, and it was Psul Mukdoshim on the second column in page Mem Daled. Now, so we have Bais Echod, it's a Tanai in the Kiyum Mitzvah. Sli is a Tanai in the Kiyum Mitzvah. And Matzu Mor is a Latchila, but it's not a Tanai. It's not a Tanai Likuva, it's a Tanai Latchila. Now, here things come interesting. The Rambam is doing something new over here, suggesting a dialogue, setting up someone asking a question and him giving an answer. You know? Wulai, yiksha alai, maksha. Maybe someone will come and ask the following question. A maksha will come and ask. Lomo, achiles pesach, matzah, umora mitzvah achas. Why do you count pesach, matzah, umora as one mitzvah? Will they simna some sholish mitzvahs? Should be a mitzvah pesach, a mitzvah matzah, and a mitzvah umora. Ushetiya achilas matzah mitzvah V'achilas mora mitzvah, v'achilas pesach mitzvah. It's very clear. Ashivenu. Omnom. Heyois achilas matzah. Mitzvah b'fnei atzmo hu emes. It's true that matzah is a separate mitzvah. K'moshe nevayeh. In mitzvah say kuf nun hey. The mitzvah say be'er terchol matzahs. Ulam. Excuse me. Okay. V'chein achilas ha-pesach mitzvah say. It's a mitzvah b'fnei atzmo. It's also emes. Achilas matzah is a separate mitzvah, and achilas ha-pesach is a separate mitzvah. K'moshe zacharnu. Because there is a mitzvah of achilas ha-pesach. Amatzah ואכלו. אבל amoro hu nimshach. I'm not sure what the better word is. Nimshach lachilas ha-pesach. It's a tofel. It goes after it. V'eino, or nigra, we'll see what the verse translation, nigra, nimshach, nitpal. V'eino nimna mitzvah b'fnei atzmo. And therefore is not counted as a separate mitzvah. Okay. Now, next. Mitzvah achilas mora would mean nimshach ha-pesach is there's no kiyum of mora b'fnei atzmoi. The kiyum of mora is only together with Pesach. And the kiyum of achilas mora is a kiyum of Pesach, not mora. V'raya l'dovo. V'raya l'dovo. Shebosa Pesach. Yochal l'kiyum ha-mitzvah. Yiyeh imoy amora o lo yiyeh. You eat the Pesach independent of moro. Whether it is moro or not moro, you eat the Pesach. Now, I'm not going to go in, just if you really want to work and get all the nitty gritty of the issues back and forth, whether mora is a separate mitzvah or not a separate mitzvah, there's an arichus in Sefer Nisim from Daniel Ababli and a tshuva Avram ben Arambam to Daniel Ababli that discusses this issue at length. Now, וראי לדובר שבשר הפסח יאכל לקיום המצווה. יהיה עמו המורו או לא יהיה, independent המורו. והמורו לא יאכל אלא בהזדמן בשר הפסח. Moro is only nechal if there's Pesach. Now, I'll tell you, the reason why I chose, there are also 3 translations over here. Ibn Eov says Bizdamen. Papach says Nechal Bali Pes Lo Yochal V'Amora Lo Yochal Bali Pesach. Now, even Tibbon says Im, and I'm nervous about this. The literal translation of the Judeo-Arabic is Im yesh b'metzias, if there is a Korban Pesach, but the eating it together doesn't say. The reason why is I'll tell you the following. The Ram's opinion in Mishnah Torah, very clear, that everyone learns in the Sefer, says in Agoda, Hoya, Tolchim Pesach Matzu Mor Biachad, L'kayim Mashenema Matzu Mor Yachlu. The Rambam has the Achilas Matzu Mora, whether they're together or separately, but it's not together with Pesach. So I thought that he's saying im, it means if you learn im yesh b'metzias, that's what Kapach says, the little translation of the words. If there is a Korban Pesach, you're going to eat the Korban Pesach, there's a mitzvah, the Matzu Mora. But the Ram never says you eat it together. And that might be that our matzah yochlu means, and that Kesef Mishnah seems to point in that direction, that our matzah yochlu is that after you eat the matzahs upon it, not together with it, you eat the Korban Pesach. And the whole discussion of Kerech, where it's biyachad, is about the matzah mora, not about the Pesach. Now, there's something strange in Rambam. Just want to point out the problem. So he says, that it's a nitval. It only exists in as much as it's together, or when you have an achilas pesach. Is being a raya that the mora is not an independent mitzvah. So then he says, "Shebesara pesach yochal l'kiyum mitzvah yiyeh imo yamora or lo yiyeh." The pesach you eat whether it's mora or not. This l'chseira is a parenthetical remark because you eat whether you eat the pesach independent of mora is not a raya whether mora is a separate mitzvah. It's only a raya that the mora is not ma'akiv, the Korban Pesach. But maybe mora is a separate mitzvah. So the second part is a raya. V'amor lo yochal ele bizdamen b'sara Pesach. Only if mitzias is a Korban Pesach, then you eat the mora. But if the mora would have been a separate mitzvah, you would have eaten it independent of Pesach. Lo amroi al matzamom yochlu means you can bring the raya from the pasuk that al matzamom yochlu, that the that mora is not a separate mitzvah. I would suggest that the Rambam is really the real proof is from the Mechilta, which is going to quote later. From the Mechilta, you understand, you learn many dinim of our matzah ya'klu. And one of them is Mora is not ma'akev in the mitzvah Kol and Pesach. And therefore he just mentions it agav. But what is really interesting, the other thing, that you also learn from this pasuk, that the Mora is not eaten without the Kol and Pesach. And that's the raya. Right. Next. V'ilu ochal moro mi beliili boso lo osa klum. It's nothing. Moro alone without Korban Pesach is nothing. V'hi achilas moro. You shouldn't say that, because without Pesach it's nothing. And that he quotes the Mechilta for. There's no kiyum of achilas mo without achilas of Pesach. He writes, there's a sentence over here. Before. He starts, V'ula yikshe olay amakshe v'yoymer, lo metimne achilas Pesach matzah umora mitzvah achas. Why do you count Pesach matzah umora as one mitzvah? But that l'chayr is a problem. There's no such thing, because matzah is a separate mitzvah. And the Rambam himself says, what did he Pesach matzah umora is one mitzvah? He himself says, he says, Hayois achilas matzah mitzvah b'nei atzmahu is emes. It's true. There is such a thing. So what does he say at the beginning? Achilas matzah umoro mitzvah achas. So the answer is very simple. That the two kiyumim in matzah and leila Pesach. There's a kiyum Pesach matzah umoro, that the matzah is a kiyum in Pesach, and there it's not a separate mitzvah. It's a kiyum in Pesach, like moro is a kiyum in Pesach. But there's a that's from the pasuk matzah umoro ומרורים יאכלוהו, that both the matzah and the moro are kiyum in Pesach. But there's a separate pasuk be'erev telchul matzahs. There's a kiyum of achilas matzah, completely independent of Pesach. And that is what he says. So then what he says at the beginning like this, he says, Lo matimna achilas Pesach matzah umora mitzvah achas, as the kiyum matzah, which the kiyum in Pesach, which is not a separate kiyum from the din of amatzah ya'klu. And then that is one mitzvah. But the hayois achilas matzah mitzvah b'nei atzmo, that's be'erev telchul matzahs. That's a separate mitzvah. Next. And here, I want to ask a question. The Ram says in Mishnah Torah, the Bizman Abayis, when one eats the Korban Pesach, okay, and he eats, according to the Rambam, the matzah moro separately, not together the Korban Pesach, but at the same meal. He eats the matzah moro, and we all al matzah moro milchlu. He eats it al matzah moro. So, but the matzah moro are necholim either together, biyachad, or separately, matzah and moro. But when you eat the matzah moro together, or you eat the matzah moro separately, you make brachas. You eat the matzah moro separately, you make a bracha al achilas matzah and a separate bracha al achilas moro. When you eat it together, you make a bracha al achilas matzah merorim. The Ram says, "Who was coming to matzah? Perches alochavov, v'achakach korech matzah umor keechod, umevatel umetaber b'chaleses, umevorech baruch ato Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kedishon b'mitzvosov v'tzivon al achilas matzah merorim v'oichlon." ואם אוכל מצה בפני עצמו, בפני עצמו, מבורך על זה בפני עצמו, ועל זה בפני עצמו. The Ram Shita is that achilas moro is not a separate mitzvah, but it's nimshach, or nitpal, or nigra, after the mitzvah achilas Korban Pesach. As the Ram says here, and also in Mishnah Torah, in Perek Zayin Halacha Yud. So why does one make a bracha al achilas moro? That's the issue that you have to ask. So there is no kiyum achilas moro. The Pesach is enhanced. It's a mitzvah of achilas Korban Pesach. Achilas matzah is not a problem. Because achilas matzah, there's a kiyum of be'erev techel matzahs. There are two kiyum, but the kiyum of be'erev techel matzah can mechayiv a bracha. But the moro, what for brought to have a bracha? Bisman is there. That's not a problem. The Ram is very clear in Hilchos Chometz Matzah that there was a separate takona to eat moro. Bisman is there, so there's a separate mitzvah. So there's nothing to do with anything. But Bisman Abayis, where there's no separate takona, and there's a mitzvah achilas moro, only vivite that it's together with the Pesach, or you have a Korban Pesach. But it's only the achilas moro is not a kiyum in itself; it's a kiyum in the Pesach. Okay, this is the problem. Seems to be like echmo chaykim many. Suggestion is that the same way the Ram says that in Afrosh Shumas Umaisris, the Ram Shita is that Achilas Hafrosha and the Sin L'Koyin is one mitzvah like the Ramban. And you make a bracha on the Hafrosha even though the Kima mitzvah is later. So if there's an obligation which comes before the culmination of the mitzvah, according to the Rami, you make a bracha on it. And the same way make a bracha on afrosha, you make a bracha on achilas moro. And the pshat is the reason why you can make a bracha before the Gemar mitzvah when the first mitzvah, according to the Ram, that's so certainly, cannot be done together with the Gemar. So hafrosha is always done before the Sina. Achilas mora is always done before the achilas kol pesach, because the Ram Shita is a matzah milchu. You don't eat it together. So since you don't eat it together, you eat it before, so you can make a bracha on part of the mitzvah. You can't make a bracha on achilas pesach when you eat the mora, and the mora is a kiyum pesach. You make that the achilas mora is much as a kiyum pesach. And that's the Ram Shita in Perches Halacha Vov and Zayin. Achilas mora, that you eat the matzah mora, or the matzah and then the matzah mora separately, and then you eat Chagigas Yudalit, and then you eat from the Korban Pesach. And there's no possibility to eat it together. So you have Shnei Chalkei HaMitzvah, Achilas Mora, Achilas Pesach. So you make a bracha on the Achilas Mora, and then you make it on Achilas HaPesach. For Sherambam, see Perches v'Rus Chometz Matzah in the various Achronim, Av Yogel, Binyan Shlomo, and the B'nai Binyam, whoever they are. That our matzah v'Yaכלוהו means to eat the matzah and the more before the Pesach. The difficulty in all this is one could be doicha the whole thing. In Afrosha Shumas Maisis, there are two tzivuyim. There's a tzivui of Afrosha, and there's a tzivui of the Sina. Mora in itself is no kiyum per se. It's only achilas mora is not a kiyum, it's a kiyum in Pesach. So that itself should mechayiv bracha psachidish. And the answer to the Ramban's kasha that the Ramban asks that on Afrosha there shouldn't be a bracha, the Ram learns they called the Dakmo Menachas, they called in Perigid Aleph, because brachas halacha ches, called mitzvah asiyah, so he gemar mitzvah chiyuva, mivorach aleh b'shas asiyah, v'chol mitzvah sheyesh acha asiyah, so tzivui acher ein ovach. The Ram's whole discussion is only about hechsheri mitzvah. The Ramban learns that even if it's not a hechsher mitzvah, you can't make a bracha on it. So you make a bracha on something before, that's okay. It's not worse than Afrosha. But the question is, any kiyum b'chlal in the achilas mora? It just enhances the kiyum korban pesach. So mitzvah Hashem, that's the problem. That's what it is. Hatzlocha. And Selah.